So the Pittsburgh Steelers had a second day of fully padded practice. We want to talk about what went on in this practice, especially with the quarterbacks, because Kenny Pickett continued to run with the number 2 offense. And there's a question now. Is Mitch Trubisky losing any ground as the starting quarterback? We'll talk about that. An emerging, maybe backup running back to Najee Harris that's getting praise from Mike Tomlin. We talked to him and Mike Tomlin. We'll show you some clips on the show. And an update on the offensive line's progress. I'm Chris Carter, joined today by Josh Roundtree of 93.7 The Fan here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content when we got it. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Joining me today, as I said before, my man Josh Roundtree. You hear him on 93.7 The Fan. I've been on his show. It's been really kind of talking. We hang out at training camp. So this is a guy who's got eyes on the scene, the Pittsburgh beat. Josh, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Let's not bury the lead here. You and I realized before we came on the air that we used to go to elementary school together, and we had no idea. We were just chatting about where we grew up, where we went to school. Sure enough, we found out we passed each other in the hallways many moons ago and had no idea. Now look at us. Here we are. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
Here we are at
Regent Square, brothers. Regent Square kids.
Regent Square kids.
I promise I will find the yearbook for my kindergarten year, and I will post a picture of Josh Roundtree, and I will not post my picture because you will never have that kind
that's a coward. That's a coward's move right there.
Yes,
it's a coward's move, but I'll allow it. I would actually love to see that picture. I'm sure my mom would love to see that picture as well. But man, that's so cool. Like it's a small world at times, but Regent Square coming full circle out in Latrobe at Steelers training camp, and man, it's been fun being out there with you guys and
same here.
Getting to take this all in. This is a different training camp than what I've experienced in the past for sure. I mean, obviously the last couple were pretty heavily affected by COVID, but even going back to Latrobe before, this one's different. It's very different.
And a big part of it is this quarterback situation. Yeah. Now, Wes Euler came on and he made a very good point. He said, it is not a quarterback competition until someone else runs with the first team. And I guess this is where I wanted to go with today's show is I guess you start to look at this quarterback's, rotation. I guess you could say that they're using at training camp right now. Mitch Trubisky's still running with the ones. But whenever we post the 7-shot numbers or how he did in third down drills, he's getting decimated. The defense has won 7 shots 5-2 for like 4 days in a row now. Like it's not even close. Like 4-3 is at least okay. It was a close one. 5-2 is you kicked butt that day. And the offense and most of the times Mitch Trubisky is getting naked lapped. He's going 0 for 4. Back to back. It's getting rough for him. But you had a tweet I thought was very interesting because the Steelers are dealing with injuries right now, minor ones because they're not, going into the season, but they're major players. Right now, he is, of course, down Diontae Johnson because he's not practicing. Chase Claypool because he hurt his shoulder. He's down Pat Freiermuth because he has a hamstring injury. He's down Najee Harris because Miles Jack stepped on his foot. And he's dealing with an offensive line that's still kind of coming together. So you brought up a great point. He's throwing to Cody White on the first team. He's throwing to Anthony Miller on the first team. And not that those guys are bad, like they're terrible, get them out at the end of it. But they're not the starters that this team was built upon to compete against NFL defenses, let alone the defense that the Steelers have put together, which is the most expensive in the NFL, and I think has a good shot to be one of the top 5 units in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, it's nothing against Cody White, but if Cody White's on the 53-man roster on September 11th when they're in Cincinnati, I'm going to be pretty stunned. That means Cody White's had one heck of a training camp, and that's who is essentially the number 2 receiver, I guess, for him, the number 2 option, and the number 1 guy. And look, I love George Pickens. I think he's going to be fantastic. But if a rookie wide receiver in his first training camp is your number one wideout for practice, it's not a good sign as far as depth goes elsewhere. As good as George Pickens, I think, is and will be, you'd like to see some more veteran players. You'd like to see Diontae Johnson, of course, out there. You'd like to see Chase Claypool with his banged up shoulder out there as well. But yeah, like, look, I mean, it's hard. And I've said this to a bunch of people who have asked me, and obviously I've done radio appearances and so forth. And people are saying like, hey, who's winning the quarterback battle? And I'm saying, I don't know, because it's not fair, I think, to judge fully what Mitch Trubisky has done. I don't know that it's fair to judge what Kenny Pickett did necessarily until this week, because I think their third string offense is terrible. With everybody having to move up because of the injuries, they're not really left with a whole lot there on that third string offense. And the offensive line play in that third string team was just abysmal. Yeah, it was horrible. So I don't know. I want to come on every show and every podcast and every radio hit and say, player X is winning this job. But as of right now, I don't think anybody's winning. Like, I don't think anybody has taken the reins of this thing and said, like, I'm going to be the Steelers quarterback. And that's fine, because we're a week into training camp.
Right.
You hope in 2 weeks that has changed significantly, or at least somewhat. But there's no way that you can, I think, fairly judge anything right now because of the injuries, and then the ineffectiveness of the third string team around first Kenny Pickett, and then these last 2 days, Mason Rudolph. I do think, though, Pickett has started to look more and more comfortable, which is really encouraging. Like, I think he hasn't been perfect. He's made some mistakes, but he looks like a different guy playing with the second team than he did with the third team. There's just a different look about him that reminds me more of the Kenny Pickett that we know that we saw at Pitt last year. Not playing like a Heisman candidate or anything like that necessarily, but just a look of more confidence, I think, from him right now.
I think what you see a lot of his success right now, some of it is timing, some of it is within the structure of the play. But when a play breaks down, and this is very Ben Roethlisberger-like, Kenny Pickett is not afraid to bust out of the pocket, make something happen, keep his eyes downfield, and find the guy who's working. And the Steelers, it's good to see that. You need a quarterback to do that in today's NFL. Patrick Mahomes does it like almost every play.
Right.
But you also need the quarterback to work within the system to say, hey, this read is designed to create these conflicts in the defense. They're going to be forced to a decision. When they make that decision, you capitalize on it. And he didn't have much chance to do this with the third team offense. He's had more chances to do it with the second team offense. And I think that's great. But like you said, I don't think that has put him in a position where it's like, oh yeah, he's definitely just going to take the job off of Mitch at some point. And even for Mason Rudolph, when he moved down to the third team, there was an obvious drop off there. Now I will say, he threw one of the best bombs I've ever seen him through in practice on Tuesday, down the sideline to Calvin Austin. I want to say that ball traveled 40 yards in the air, and it was right in his breadbasket over the top. Would have been a touchdown. So like, Mason Rudolph has acquitted himself well in these practices. Like, he's like the people who thought, and I said this going into training camp, the people who thought that he was just going to be bowed out, just quit, why is he even there?
Yeah.
I think you underestimated the importance of knowing an offense and not having to adjust to it as much as your counterparts in the quarterback room. I think that is something that people underestimated there. And we've seen it play out in the early parts of camp, but I think that's going to that difference is going to start to narrow out now that we're getting more into the deeper parts of training camp. And I think with Mitch Trubisky, especially when you see them in some of these preseason games, the defense is beating up on the offense in all these practices. When they finally get to go up against a defense that doesn't have Cam Hayward and TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick and all these guys that, Miles Jack playing like a demon out there, Devontae KZ filling in very well. When they get to play a defense that's got more holes in it, I think they're going to feel the advantage there going up against a team like that.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, look, it's it's not a great introduction if you're Kenny Pickett or if you're Mitch Trubisky, that your first training camp with the Steelers is against TJ Watt coming around Chooks Okorafor for pretty frequently. And like that's a tough assignment to begin with. So for all of these guys, I mean, there's challenges. I thought I thought on Monday, I thought Mason Rudolph did not look comfortable at all with the third string. I thought he took, and I said it, I thought he took a significant step back in where he had been with the second team, the confidence that he was playing with. And then I thought today, he wasn't great, but I thought that he made a couple of throws that I said, hey, you know what? That's a pretty darn good throw right there. And I think you're seeing a driven, motivated guy. He talked today, and so many people were responding. I put out a video of him answering questions, and he was talking about, he thought he was going to get first team reps here soon, and he might, but he just doesn't. He's not a guy that sounds confident when he talks, but I thought he looked confident on the field today. Like, I thought he made a couple of plays that were pretty solid. I don't know that I don't think it was a bad day by any sorts. I thought yesterday, Monday, was a bad day for Mason Rudolph. And you're right, man. I mean, when they start to get, in the preseason, when they start to play different teams, different opponents, different defenses that don't know what they're going to do, I think that's a huge component of this. I mean, I think as much as they maybe try to hide or change or whatever against their own defense, I think that you get familiar at this point in camp with instincts, with you get tipped off to different tendencies by players if you're a defensive guy. And I think you start to pick up on what a play is going to be, and it allows you to cheat a little bit. I forget who it was. It might have been you. I don't know. But somebody said, hey, like, watch Diontae Casey here. He's going to start to speak up because he knows what's coming. Like, he knows that they're about to run the ball right at him, and he's going to cheat and start to sneak up because he knows. Seattle next Saturday is not going to know, and that's going to, I think, help the Steelers and their quarterbacks to maybe start to flow a little bit more offensively. And I think if they can just have a good day, which I don't know that they've had a good day as an offense as a whole yet, if they can have a good day on a field in a game, I think that's going to be super beneficial to them going forward back when they get back into camp that Monday after that game.
Absolutely. I want to talk about another play on the offense, a surprise player who stepped up in the conversation. We'll talk about that in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we got to talk to you about one of our newest sponsors, and they're called BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a service that's going to help you find therapy. It's going to help you deal with situations in your life, because life is full of twists and turns, and it's important to show up for yourself through it all. BetterHelp is an online therapy that will assess your needs and can match you with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 48 hours. You could talk about your personal experience with BetterHelp or with therapy in general. If it's not a crisis line, it's not self-help. It's actual professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. I'm a person myself. I go through things just like anybody else. There's times where I thought I wasn't sure about what I was doing. I needed therapy in my life, and it really helped. And it really helps to have a therapist help you to organize your thoughts, think through things, and come out and focus on day-to-day life with a better understanding of the things that you're dealing with that you can't always pay attention time to and figure out on your own end. That's where professional help comes in, and that's where BetterHelp comes in. You can log on to your account anytime. You can send a message to your therapist at any point in time, and with therapy, it can take a few tries to find the right fit for you, but BetterHelp is here to make it easy for you and free to change. It's free to change therapists whenever you need, and they have a special offer right now for our listeners. You can get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. Again, that's 10% off your first month of online therapy at BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Josh Roundtree of 93.7 The Fan. Josh, got to go over this with you because there's a new running back in town who is making some headway, and he's not a player that I think most people were talking about. He's a rookie, undrafted, out of Oklahoma State, Jaylen Warren. And we were watching practice, and this isn't the first practice. He's been doing this a few times now, but especially on the Tuesday practice, he was coming out, and you heard Mike Tomlin saying, hey, 3-0, 3-0, good job, 3-0, good business, 3-0. And then when Mike Tomlin's talking about somebody, especially a rookie, you're earning it. Yeah, because he tries to, especially rookies, like when George Pickens was making all those plays, like I said, hey, what'd you feel about George Pickens? Like, I ain't crowning nobody yet. And I was like, oh, excuse me, Mr. Mike Tomlin. But with Jaylen Warren, he was willing. Hey, he's been doing it for about a week now. So here was my question when I asked Mike Tomlin what's impressed him the most of Jaylen Warren.
Mike, we heard you call out 3-0 a lot in practice. What's he been doing to catch your eye in his reps?
He appears to be highly conditioned, and I think it kind of starts there for a young guy. We always say one man's misfortune is another man's opportunity, and so there's some short lines at running back. But if you're not highly conditioned, you're not positioning yourself to take advantage of it. And so kudos to him for coming ready.
And I think that's really interesting to hear from Mike. Hey, I'm keeping it simple here. We're hurt up at running back. Najee's not playing at the moment. They're figuring things out, and they don't have an established. And Jeremy McNichols didn't practice. He's been dealing with a thing, but and they don't have an established number 2 running back on this roster. That's why they went and signed Jeremy McNichols. That's why they've been working out Jordan Howard and people like that to see what's going on there. So Jaylen Warren, a quote unquote long lost cousin of Willie Parker. He is related to the former Super Bowl champion running back Willie Parker. And I think that was interesting, but we got to talk to him after practice. Here's Jaylen Warren talking about, his day and what's been working for him so far.
Some guy miss or accelerate. What did you do to kind of add that part to your game and make it something that seems like a staple out there?
I guess it's just always been my thing. I've never been the fastest, coming out of high school, I wasn't really highly recruited because my top end speed wasn't the greatest. So I guess that's always been one thing to stick with me is just my cuts.
This was the most interesting part to me because Willie Parker, he was fast. You hit the line, he was gone. But what I really like about watching Jaylen Warren in these plays, Josh, is when he's going to a hole, he's looking to make a cut in a direction, to change direction, to shake the defender. And also in the passing game, there was a really good rep where he was up against Ulysses Gilbert and he put like a little shake move and got open. This guy has explosiveness, agility. Those are good things. And the Steelers just need something of a backup running back. Have some sort of strength that we can say, hey, that's something competitive we could put on the field and teams will have to respect. Has Jaylen Warren already jumped to number 2 for you, or do you feel like, hey, there's still way too much to see from all these guys right now?
I got to see him do it in a preseason game. You know what I mean? I got to see him run like this in a preseason game. But I will say, going back all the way to OTAs or maybe even rookie minicamp, I told my counterpart with the Fan, I told Jeff Hathorn, I said, all right, what undrafted free agent do you like to maybe make the team right now? Like who's your guy that just the early eye test, you're like, I like him. And his was Mateo Durant, and mine was Jaylen Warren. And I said, I think this guy, I just like the look of him. He reminds me, and they made the comparison of Maurice Jones-Drew, but he just looks like that bowling ball kind of running back. But the one thing that I like is sometimes you get those like short, sort of stocky running backs, and they're just straight ahead. Like they're going to dive into the pile. They're going to get you to 3 yards. But he has like that second burst, that he has that shiftiness to get himself space. And you're right. Like he's always looking for the cut. He's always looking for the next wave, and he's sensing the first wave, seeing the next one, and he's picking it up. The running stuff is really good. What I really like is what I saw him go through in backs on backers. Like he got thrown out there time and time again, and he was ready and willing time and time again to go at it in backs and backers. And he should. He comes from a pass-happy offense there. In Oklahoma State, he played in the Big 12, and there's a ton of passing that goes on there. So he should know, he should know a thing or two about pass blocking. And I thought he was really ready for that. The big thing I think for him is, can he play special teams and can he excel on special teams? And I asked him about that today, and he said, I want to make Danny Smith, the Steelers special team coach, I want to make him my best friend. And I like that answer. Like, I like a guy that he's not convinced that, like, hey, you know what? I look good running the football. I'm making this team because of that. He knows that he has to make it on special teams. Even Benny Snell, who's a number 2 guy, one of Benny Snell's strengths is that he has been a reliable special teams player. And he's made some big hits in the special teams side of things. So I think Jaylen Warren knows if he's going to make this team, he's got to stand out to Danny Smith. He's also got to stand out as a running back as well. I'm not ready to put him at the number 2 running back spot yet because I got to see what he can do in an actual game setting when it's live time after time after time. I want to see him in these first couple preseason games get a good amount of carries, and I want to see what he can do. But I do like him, and I do think if you had to ask me right now, is he going to make the team? I'm going to say yes.
Ooh, there you go. There's a bold prediction from Josh Roundtree on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Now, I will say Benny Snell has not looked terrible. In fact, he's looked good. Just in fact, on Tuesday, I was tweeting this out. There was a wheel route he ran, well executed, right over Robert Spillane, caught it, and even had to dive a little bit to go get it, pulled it in. Looked really good in that. There was like an out route he ran that I thought was really solid. The receiving game was never something that I thought Benny Snell was going to be something he get. I was like, man, if this guy's going to make the team or make a difference in the offense, one, he has to, like you say, keep playing well on special teams. But if he's going to make a difference as a running back, it's going to be power back. It's going to be, plowing people, punishing people, being a closer on that defense on against defenses to give Najee Harris a break. But if you're able to catch some passes, run some routes, that's a major aspect that the Steelers could use right now. And that's not to say that Anthony McFarland couldn't do that. That's not to say that Najee Harris won't end up doing that a lot, or that Jaylen Warren can't do that either. But I think it brings another weapon to him. He's been working on it. I asked him, about this at the end of last week, what does he feel he's grown? And he said, I focused on every aspect of my game to get ready for this training camp because I know how serious it is. He knows that his clock is ticking if he wants to prove a point. And I think I've liked his response this year to show like, hey, I am a veteran in the NFL and this is what I'm prepared to do to be there. So I agree with you. There's a lot of people that are excited about Jaylen Warren. We all talk to him, and he seems like a very humble and nice guy. But I'm not ready to just say, oh yeah, these are just his keys now to line up behind Najee Harris. This is still very much a 6-way battle.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, look, and like I tweeted out earlier too. You mentioned Anthony McFarland. He's like this weird case to me where time and time again, I look at him and I say, I just don't think this guy has a shot at making it. And then he does something and you're like, wow, like
where'd that go?
This guy can be unbelievable. Like today, he takes a sweep, Tuesday's practice, takes a sweep to the right side. He gets one block, gets to the edge, beats everybody to the edge, turns it upfield. He would have been gone, I think, if it had been fully live. And you just see it and you're like, man, like, why can this guy not do this in game action? Like, what is the block there? And if he can figure that out, like, he can be a good player for them and he can be a needed player for them because I think he adds a different element than what they have with Najee Harris and what they have with Benny Snell. Like, he can be that guy that you can get out in space that can make guys miss. And I think that he has a lot of weapons that I like, but for some reason, it's like 3 times out of 4, you're like, I don't like that from him. I don't like that from him. And then he does that one time. You're like, wow, like he's a guy. The one thing with him is his pass blocking, man, backs on backers. McFarland just got eaten alive in backs on backers. Like,
it's not going to be his strength.
That's not his game. And it's not his game at all. And that's fine if he's doing other things. The problem is that he hasn't done enough of the other things. He's been hurt some as well, obviously, and inactive as well. So that competition's definitely open. And again, I like Jaylen Warren. I from the first time I laid eyes on him, I was like, this guy there's just something about him that I think works for the Steelers offense potentially. And I like him, but you're right. I mean, there's going to be, look, if we go into, at first preseason game, we're sitting there at that first preseason game, the Steelers line up against the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And Mateo Durant goes off. It changes everything.
I agree. There's a lot of things that could happen, and we got to see this in live competition. And like we've pointed out, live competition is not the defense that knows that it's coming, because when these Steelers are playing, they're reacting. Like you said, like we can see them saying, hey, this is coming. We know this play. We've seen this one before. There's a lot of things that are going to play out, but I do think the backup running back position is a more interesting battle right now than I think people gave it credit for heading into this.
And don't forget, report day, when we talked to Najee Harris, he kind of made a call out for that number 2 running back. He said, we need a number 2 running back. And I took that as, okay, that's a leadership thing. It's also a little bit of a shot to some of these guys that, it's a shot.
You're not the number 2 yet.
it's a shot at Benny Snell. Like, if Najee Harris doesn't view them as capable number 2 backs, then they need to take that message. And whether you like it or you don't, take the message.
I hear that. We got to switch to another topic in a second because I want to talk about the offensive line in front of those guys. We'll do that in just a minute here. But first, we got to talk to you guys about betonline.net. Y'all know about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball, which is going on right now. You want to get all the betting lines, odds, ends, everything you know to make money off of baseball, you go to BetOnline. But also, NFL's around the corner. NBA is going to be heating up soon. So is the NHL. All those things are going to be prop bets, preseason bets to get you ready. BetOnline is going to show you all those odds. You can go there, learn about them, and find the best ways to make money on sports right on betonline.net, your number one source for all your sports bet wagering information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends of the action when you visit BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Josh Roundtree of 93.7 The Fan. Josh, let's talk about the offensive line because we've seen these guys take some steps up. You know, I wouldn't even say like all of them taking steps forward, but I do think this group is becoming more competitive. They're becoming more physical. Now that the pads are on, we're getting to see them actually move guys. You know, I don't know if anyone's ever done it, but like when you're trying to be an offensive lineman in a half speed situation with no shoulder pads on, it is difficult to win because you like the whole part of how you're blocking is you're aiming for their shoulder pads. You're getting up and you're getting that leverage. That is tough to gauge. And that was the offensive line was getting their butts kicked without the pads on. With the pads on, I mean, the defense is still winning, but the offensive line, I thought, did better. They were opening up holes. They had good moments. And one thing I noticed was that Alex Highsmith wasn't destroying Dan Moore Jr. anymore. Like he had his wins, but like last year, Dan Moore Jr. was just a ragdoll to Alex. He was just like, move out my way. Thank you. I'm coming through. And that's not the case anymore. And right before we got hit with a torrential downpour, I was able to get to Alex Highsmith. I wanted to ask him about it. And here was Alex Highsmith. You can kind of hear him through the rain and the storm. Here's Alex talking about Dan Moore and giving and letting you know what he's been like in camp this year.
Yeah. Alex, in the torrential downpour, what's this battle like with Dan Moore?
Oh, it's been good, man. He's just sharpening the R&R, like Coach T said. So when we started to see, he's grown a lot from last year. We started to see him be an anchor for our line. So it's been good going against him.
I got out there so fast because like if you couldn't tell by the camera view or the sound, if you're listening on one of our audio platforms, it was starting to pour. And so we were like, we're running for the tent. Yeah, we were just trying to get some cover. But Alex,
yeah, we've been hit with all sorts of weather up there.
Man,
like it's like one day I literally was soaking wet from the rain and also got sunburned.
And that was like the second day of camp. I think it was like the Thursday. Oh my gosh, because it was pouring down rain. Like everyone's suit. If you didn't wear like good shoes, your feet were drenched. And I'm just like but then at the end of practice, it was beating down sun, and I was just like, what is going on here? So
I had to go to my car and get my golf shoes out of my golf bag and wear them for the rest of the day because they were the only dry pair of shoes that I had on me. And I've learned now, bring another pair of shoes, bring a pair of socks, because you're going to need them at some point during training camp. This is the second time today that I've needed to change. But anyways.
But more to Alex's point, I have seen Dan Moore Jr. take steps forward.
Yeah, for sure.
This is something that they need to happen. This offensive line, I've said this a million times. This offensive line doesn't need to be top 10. It doesn't need to be like, the Pouncey DeCastro days. All it needs to do is just be formidable and just even mediocre, just middle of the NFL. Get to that point where it's like, hey, you're not terrible. Yeah. You're giving your offense a chance. Josh, have you seen anything that's made you think, hey, they could be trending towards that direction?
Yeah, what's interesting, and I talked to Dan Moore earlier today, and one thing that is intriguing to me about him is like, and I'm sure you remember this too, go back to, rookie camp last year and OTAs in minicamp last year. The guy was an absolute mess. Like, he didn't look like he belonged on an NFL football field in any way. I even said at the time, like back in OTAs, I thought he was the worst player on the field, period. And they stuck by him and like he was getting abused by like Cassius Marsh every single snap. He was just getting it handed to him. And they stuck by him and they stuck with him. And I thought that jump that he made in training camp was significant. And I'm wondering if we're going to start to see that again. He thinks that he can make that jump, and he thinks his time's really important. But I like what he has done. I think he got a lot better last year. I think he's starting to get a really good feel for it again this year too.
I really think that there's a big key here. I've been saying all along, the Steelers need at least, I'd say, 2 to 3 anchors on this offensive line. What I mean by anchors, I mean guys that are able to hold it down and be like, hey, you're the strong points here. If anything else fails, everyone knows that you're going to win your assignment and people can feed off of that. Like, for example, Ramon Foster was never an elite offensive lineman. And he was always good to very good. But when he was next to Pouncey, their chemistry made them a dangerous duo next to each other. Same thing for when you looked at Marcus Gilbert for years. Now, Marcus Gilbert was very good on his own, but him and DeCastro, when they were at the same time, you didn't want to touch the right side of the Steelers offensive line because they were going to crush you. And I think it was the same thing down the line, even with Foster next to Villanueva. That chemistry, that success with Pouncey, Villanueva was able to feed off and say, hey, you know what? I can trust Ramon to take this gap because he's going to win this assignment. And I can just focus on, hey, I have the edge. This edge guy will not get past me. And that you start to fill in those holes instead of saying, oh, man, I got to go make up for this guy because he's a rookie and he doesn't know where he's going. There's a trust factor there. And I'm not saying it's all the way there, but I'm saying I'm seeing the remnants of those factors start to creep into this offensive line's play. And we're only 2 fully padded practices into the Steelers training camp.
Yeah. And I think, along those lines too, Chris, like he's had a revolving door next to him at left guard, Dan Moore. They've been throwing Dotson in there. They've been throwing Green in there. I mean, even today, Green started with the first team, and then Dotson came in later. So they switched it up even during the day today. So that's not easy for a guy either when, the guy next to you is different from one drive to the next. So I give him a ton of credit for that. But I'm with you. Like, I do see progress. Is it going to be enough? Has it been enough? It hasn't to this point. Like, they still need to get a whole lot better. I think if they got work to do. Right. If they're going to be, an above average run game, which I think they have to be in order to be successful this year. If they're going to be that, then they have to take a much bigger step than where they are right now. But I do think these first 2 padded practices have been really, really good for that group. And like I've asked guys too, like, how much chemistry can you really gain without pads on? Like, how much can you really learn? They're like, yeah, like you can get some chemistry stuff. You can get some technique work done, but like, you don't know who a guy is until pads go on. And like, I think these defensive players too, they don't know who a guy is on the other side of the ball until they go in and hit him. Like, how is a guy going to respond to getting hit in the mouth for the first time? Like, and that's one thing where I think that's when you really start to learn about units, is when you put pads on. And that's what we got to know with this team over the last couple of days. And yeah, I'm with you. Like, I think that they're gelling a little bit, but I got to see a lot more because it's just such a crucial thing for them to get that right. Like, if they even if they're like below average, like they're not going to be successful. They have to be above average because they have an unknown at quarterback. And no matter who there is at quarterback, like that guy is going to benefit so much more if they can have an above average run game. And they've put some emphasis on it. I mean, they say they've put a lot of emphasis on it. I don't know that their personnel moves have necessarily backed that up, but they say that they want to become a big time power running team. Well, you got to get there. I'm with them. They need to do that, but they're not there yet.
I agree with you on that sentiment, because if they're serious about that, it's going to take more than that. That's where you can still be a good offensive line without being a great one. Just like, hey, bully these moments, win these moments, and do that. Now,
but like, here's the thing though, like that's my biggest problem, I think, with this team in general, is that like we've heard for 3 years now that they want to get back to Steeler football and running the ball. And there's this, commandment from Art Rooney to be more of a Steelers team, but then like the personnel decisions haven't really matched that. Like, yeah, they got the running back, but they like, to me, that's, I don't know, that's like throwing $2,000 tires on a $500 car. Like, to me, it's just, it doesn't make sense. Like,
but hold up.
I love Najee, but like, come on. At what point do you have to start to give him a little help in front of him?
Look, man, if my car got spinning rims on him, don't you ever slander it. I don't care what kind of car I got. But no, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, exactly, the spree wells. But in all seriousness, I hear what you're saying there, and that's been a concern for a lot of fans. Is like, hey, can Najee Harris create without a great offensive line? I don't think this, like I said, I don't think this offensive line needs to be great. They need to show that they can consistently be middle of the road. That when the scheme is there, when everything's drawn up, when the defense isn't loading up the offensive front, then you can win those battles. They didn't do that consistently enough last year, and if they're going to take a step forward, those have to be the matchups they win. They can't have 6 and 7 man fronts when they've got a tight end in the box and be losing those consistently like they did last year. We'll see if that changes as the season goes on. Josh, thanks so much for joining us here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's always a pleasure to have good people on here, and you're good people, sir. So we're going to have you on here more often.
That's because I'm a Regent Square guy.
Yeah, we brought it home.
Regent Square Elementary School in the house. Yeah. We've made it. Look at us.
We have made it.
We've made it.
I don't know. Well, we became the Regent Square Rattlesnakes. Like, we actually voted on a school.
Really?
Yeah, it was weird. Our colors were purple and white, which I didn't get because, like, what rattlesnake is purple and white? But whatever, elementary school. Anyways, Josh,
rattlesnakes for life, man.
Exactly.
Rattlesnakes for life.
Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work, Josh.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, you can see my Twitter handle, JROWN32. You can also check out our 93.7 The Fan Twitter handle as well. And then a lot of my work can be found on 93.7 The Fan's website, 937thefan.com. So Jeff Hathorn and I, we do podcasting. We do videos from camp. We have tons of updates. We go on our shows as well and do reports from throughout camp, and so we're trying to stay on top of it. So appreciate it if you can tune in and take a look at what we've got going on, because we're out there sweating or getting wet. I don't know, both maybe.
No, we're sweating and then we're getting wet. Yes. So it's even worse. It's disgusting.
Yes. Like you're drenched in sweat, and then you get rain just dumped on you to end your day, and you get to drive all the way back an hour and 5 minutes to Pittsburgh, and you're soaking wet the whole way.
Josh isn't bitter. Neither am I, because I do the same thing. Anyways, Josh, thanks so much.
Hey, thanks, man.
Thank you. You can follow me, Christopher Carter, on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. You can listen to this show, the Locked On Steelers podcast, on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey. By the way, if you're a 93.7 fan and a Locked On Steelers fan, you can listen to both on the Odyssey app and switch between them. So do that. It's actually a great app. It's a great thing to check out. You can also watch this show on YouTube. If you're enjoying this show on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes. I do want to give an update here. This is when I say read my work at SteelersNow.com. If you follow me on Twitter, you know I've announced that I am no longer with SteelersNow.com. There's an announcement coming today, this Wednesday, about where I am going. You'll see that, so stay tuned. Thank you, Josh. You'll see that. Stay tuned. It's going to be a big announcement, and I'm very excited to tell y'all where I'm headed next. It's still in Pittsburgh, and I'm keeping the Locked On Steelers podcast, so don't fret about that. But we'll get you all those updates on my Twitter account at Carter Critique. So follow me to get that update. We'll talk to you guys soon after another day of training camp right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.